Assalamu alaikum. The Lahore Ahmadiyya community welcomes you to its Sunday morning broadcast called The Call of the Messiah. I want to remind you that the Lahore Ahmadiyya community was created by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib and we, that is Hazrat Sahib, and the community he created believe that the Holy Prophet Muhammad was the very last prophet. No prophet, old or new, shall come after him. And Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad's claim was inscribed on his tombstone, approved by Hazrat Maulana Nuruddin, the head of the movement. And it said, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, landlord of Qadian, Mujaddad of the 14th century, the promised Messiah and Mahdi. And this tombstone remained there for many years, and no one objected to it. So this shows that the claim of being the promised Messiah was no greater than the claim of being the Mujaddid. We believe that the Holy Quran is complete and perfect, and none of its verses are abrogated. Sunni friends believe that Ayah Rajam, for example, is missing from the Holy Quran. Shia friends believe that Surah Vilayat, a whole chapter called Vilayat, is missing from the Holy Quran. And they also believe some verses of the Holy Quran have been abrogated. We reject all these things. In our view and in our founder's view, the Holy Quran is complete and it's perfect. The founder of the Jamaat and we believe that anyone and everyone who recites the kalima, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, is a Muslim and must be regarded as such despite any differences. And in the words of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if one reciter of the kalima says to another reciter of the kalima that you are not a Muslim, it is the caller who goes out of the fold of Islam. This is how seriously the Holy Prophet Muhammad regarded this matter. For the last couple of broadcasts, we've been looking at and answering the objection against Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib that he preached loyalty to the British government and so on and so forth. And it is pretended that the whole of the Muslim India was running to fight the British, but this lonely voice from Qadian said, this is not jihad in Islamic terms. This is just fighting. And they all stopped dead in their tracks. This man, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib, whom they called a kafir, he said, this is not jihad, and they all stopped. So in the last two broadcasts, we looked at Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, who was a great reformer in educational sense of the Muslims. Muslims had declared, Muslim ulama scholars had said that Anyone who studies English, anyone who studies Western subjects like physics, chemistry, medicine, and so on, is a heretic, is a kafir, goes out of the fold of Islam. But Sir Sayyid went ahead and he built a school, a college, a university to teach Muslims these things. And in the last two broadcasts, we showed how loyal he was to the British. To the extent that in 1857, when Indians rose up to drive British out of India, and the British officer retreated from one area, Sir Sayyid held it safe for the British. Today we are going to look at the writings of Allama Sir Muhammad Iqbal. He is regarded as, he is called the poet philosopher behind the creation of Pakistan, philosopher of Pakistan. It is said that he is the first one who put forward this idea that India should be partitioned into India and Pakistan, and a separate Muslim state should be created. And literally, if you read books and so on from Pakistan, it is as if he had a machine gun slung on his back. He was riding a horse, fighting to send the British back. But let us see what he actually said. These are extracts, English translations of the extracts of things that he wrote. And then I will share with you the evidence that he actually wrote these things, because these are from a website. So let's start at the top. When Queen Victoria died in 1901, Dr. Iqbal wrote a 10-page poem called Tears of Blood to lament the Queen's passing away. She died on Eid al-Fitr, and he wrote this: happiness came, but grief came with it. Yesterday was Eid, but today is Muharram. Muharram is the day of grief. It's the day when Hazrat Imam Hussain alayhi salam was martyred by the evil Yazid. So he is comparing the day of death of Queen Victoria to the day of martyrdom of Hazrat Imam Hussain. Easier than the grief and mourning of this day would be the coming of the morn of the day of judgment. The queen of the realm, the queen of the realm of the hearts has passed away. My sacred, my scarred heart has become a house of mourning. O India, thy lover has passed away. She who sighed at thy troubles has passed away. O India, the protective shadow of God has been lifted from above you. She who sympathized with your inhabitants is gone. Listen to this. O India, the protective shadow of God has been lifted from above you. Victoria is not dead, as her good name remains. This is the life to whomever God gives it. May the deceased receive abundant heavenly reward, and may we show goodly patience. This is in a book called Baqiyat Iqbal, and the poem runs from pages 71 to 90. 19 pages, lamenting the death of Empress of India. And who's blamed? Yes, it's Mirza Ghulam Ahmad who's to blame for everything. In December 1911, when King George, coronation of King George, he was crowned, and Iqbal wrote a poem called Our King. Our King. It is the height of our good fortune that our King is crowned today. But this life, by his life, our peoples have honor. By his name, our respect is established. The same book on page 206. During the First World War, Sir Michael O'Dwyer, who was governor of Punjab, asked Iqbal to write a poem or something to show support for the British Crown. Remember, this is when the Sunni soldiers from India and Arabia were attacking Turkey and killing Turks and destroying the Khilafat and destroying the Turkish Khilafat. Sunni Muslims are also fighting for the British in France and dying. And they were just being laid in graves with Christians and so on. There were no arrangements for a proper funeral for a Muslim, a Hindu, or a Sikh. They were just all lumped together with everyone else who died. And of course, the vast majority were Christians. Hazrat Maulana Sadruddin Rahmatullah Alayh, the Lahore MD Imam and missionary, he was fighting the mightiest empire in the world, the British Empire, for a proper burial of the Indian soldiers. For a proper burial of the Indian soldiers. He is the one who acquired a plot of land at Horsell Common, close to Woking, so that the Indian Muslims' body would go to Woking, where the Lahore and the Imam will prepare the body, say the funeral prayers, and then the body would be taken to Horsell Common and buried there. This is what Lahori MDs were doing. And what Iqbal was doing was this, writing this poem. If there is freedom of speech and writing here, if there is peace between the temple and the mosque here, if there is an organized system of business of the various people here, if there is strength in the dagger and life in the sword here, whatever there is, it has been granted to you, O honored one. This land is alive only because of your existence. I am the tree of loyalty. Iqbal is the tree of loyalty to the British. I am the tree of loyalty. Love is my fruit. A just witness to this statement are my actions. Sincerity is selfless. So is truth selfless. So is service. So is devotion selfless. Pledge, loyalty, and love are also selfless, and devotion to the royal throne is also selfless. When the Lahori MD Imam is fighting the British government for the rights of Muslims to be buried properly, to the extent that the Secretary of State for War writes a memo saying, rid me of this troublesome Maulvi, referring to the fact that Maulana Sadruddin created such a hue and cry and fuss. about Muslim soldiers not being buried properly, that it created consternation and problems at the highest levels of the British government. So the Secretary of State for War says, will someone rid me of this troublesome Maulvi? A Lahori MD is fighting for the rights of Sunni Muslims to be buried properly. And what is the Sunni philosopher of the East and Pakistan writing? Pledge, loyalty, and love are also selfless. My devotion to the royal throne is selfless. But being human, the thought which arises naturally is that your favors are manifest upon it. Iqbal's devotion to the royal throne was selfless. This poem was published first in Akhbar-e-Haq and then in the book Hindustan or Jang-e-Alamgir, India and the World War, by a gentleman called Ram. And then it was included in Baqiyat-e-Iqbal on page 216 to 90. And the interesting thing is that it was first read out by Iqbal himself at the Punjab University Hall. Here we have another quotation. Not only in poetry but in prose also Dr. Iqbal praised the British nation. For example, he writes, many among us, including myself, believe that England at this time possesses the capability of leading the whole of mankind towards this objective. The thinking of the people of that land, their political understanding based on a deep study of human nature, their unshakable, serious resolve, their moral superiority over others in many aspects, their astonishing control over material resources, their existence of many movements among them for the welfare and betterment of human beings, and their discipline in every walk of life. All these things which no outsider can refrain from admiring. Harf Iqbal, page 167, and it was said in 19th. Listen to it. Their moral superiority over others, that means over Islam. Now, I've read these quotations, but certainly about the first ones, about the poems and so on, I will show you the original Urdu of this translation I'm about to read out. So, at the close of his life, Iqbal perhaps felt regret at having praised British rule. It is recorded by his chronicler. He had a diarist, I think his name was Sayyid Nazir Niazi, who used to go every day and write what took place. The Allama said, Ghalib was indeed a very great poet, but to write poetry in praise of the British government merely to get an increase in the stipend is to be greatly regretted. This tendency of Ghalib pains one considerably. He then said, slavery is a great curse. It causes one to say things deliberately as well as unintentionally, which one does not want to. The Allama was perhaps regretting that he himself had composed verses of poetry in praise of the British government, whether this was under compulsion or due to helplessness, whatever the reason, it should not have happened. Perhaps with this thought in mind, the Allama became silent. We too were silent. But that's interesting, isn't it? So that means that he is now, after the fact, His supporter is trying to claim that this was done under compulsion. But never mind. Let me now show you the Urdu of where this is said. Ah, I have closed that book. It was open. Let me see if I can find it and open it. If I can, I will. But I'll have to. I hit the wrong button, unfortunately, at the end of the last the Urdu thing. Just give me 1 minute. Should be here somewhere. If I can find it. I can't seem to find it. But you've heard the English, and if people insist, actually, it is at the end of the Urdu broadcast that I've just done. So if you want to see it, just go to the end of the Urdu broadcast, and it is there. So we needn't waste time on this. Now, let me let me share something else with you. As I said, I'm not going to spend time looking for it because it's shown at the end of the previous broadcast. Right. Iqbal is regarded as the person who was the philosophy, the thinker behind the creation of Pakistan. And when he made this suggestion that the provinces on one side of India, what is now Pakistan, should be combined together in one state where Muslims are in a majority, then there was much criticism of this idea in Britain. And shortly after that, Iqbal came to England to take part in a conference, and some people wrote letters to newspapers. And one of them, a gentleman called E. Thompson, he wrote to the Times. And Thompson's letter was published on 3rd of October, and Iqbal wrote on the 10th of October a reply to that, and it was published on the 12th of October. Now, unfortunately, it's very bad. I've tried to clean it up as much as possible, but I have to move very close to the screen to be able to read it to you. Northwest India, Muslim provinces, to the editor of the Times. Sir, writing in your issue of October the 3rd last, Dr. E. Thompson has torn the following passage from its context in my presidential address to the All India Muslim League of last December in order to account with the word the evidence of pan-Islamic plotting. So what he was saying is that Dr. Thompson says this is a part of our plan of a pan-Islamic, one Islamic government. And Iqbal says, no, 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 no. I reject that. He says, I would like to see the Punjab, Northwest Frontier provinces, Sindh and Balochistan amalgamated in a single state. Self something or other, single state, within the British Empire or without the British Empire. So Iqbal is quite happy for this state to be within the British Empire. So where is the freedom that we are told Iqbal was fighting for and so on? And so he goes on to say, no Indian Muslim with any something to contemplate a Muslim state or a series of states in northwest India outside the British Commonwealth of Nations. Can you imagine that? He's saying no Muslim even pretends that there should be these outside the British Empire. And then he goes on to say, amongst other things, the most relevant part is the last sentence. A series of contented and well-organized Muslim provinces on the northwest frontier of India would be the bulwark of India and of the British Empire against the hungry generations of Asiatic highlands. He is referring to the Russians there. Read this. A series of contented and well-organized Muslim provinces of northwest frontier or on northwest frontier of India. What would they do? There will be a dam. They will fight. What will they fight for? To spread Islam? To combine all the Muslim countries into one? No, they will fight for what? Bulwark of India and the British Empire against the hungry generations. So Iqbal wants a Pakistan created to fight to protect the British interest and shed Muslim blood for the sake of the British. Did Mirza Ghulam Ahmad ever do that? Did Hazrat Naseem Maud say, shed blood for the British so that the British Empire remains over you forever? And yet we are told that it wasn't Iqbal who was a British agent, it wasn't Sir Sayyid who was a British agent, it was Mirza Ghulam Ahmad who was a British agent. I can't remember whether I've asked this or not in the English part of the broadcast, but who gave Iqbal the title of Allama? Was it the Khalifa in Turkey? Was it the ruler of Saudi Arabia? Servants of the holy places? Was it the king of Egypt? Who was it? The answer is British. Who gave Iqbal the title of Sir? Who gave Sayyid Ahmad the title of Sir? Was it the Turkish Khalifa who gave Iqbal the title of Sir? Who was it? It was the British, and he gratefully took it. Now the question is, why would the British give Iqbal the title of Sir, Allama and Sir, if he was against the British? These titles were only given to the people who were loyal to the British Empire. They were only given to the people who served the interests of the British Empire. They were given to people who served the crown for their services to the crown. And all of this is forgotten in hatred and prejudice against Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib. All of this is forgotten. But we've got the extracts. We've downloaded them. We've saved them. So that when history is distorted and lies are told, we can put it right. This is the end of today's broadcast. I just want to mention our program for next week. You may or may not know that every day we have a broadcast called Reflections on the Holy Quran, or Tadabburul Quran in Urdu, and from 7 p.m. to 7:30 it's in Urdu, and from 7:30 to 8 it is in English. And these broadcasts take place on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Now, the week that starts tomorrow, we are taking a break, and there will be no such broadcasts. Our next broadcast will be the Eid service on Friday, the 31st of July, and then that will be followed by the Jummah service, and then again there'll be no broadcast lessons in Islam on Saturday, which is only in English, and there'll be no broadcast in Urdu or English called the Call of the Messiah on Sunday. We go back to our normal routine on Monday, 3rd of August. So until we meet again, I pray that Allah keeps all of you safe and sound and free from harm. Assalamu alaikum, Khuda Hafiz, goodbye.